The last minute of the year is supposed to feel hopeful. People count down, glasses rise into the air, and strangers hug as fireworks tear open the sky. But sometimes, while the world is celebrating a new beginning, someone somewhere is making a decision that will end a life forever. This is one of those stories. A crime that didn't begin with rage or chaos, but with silence, planning, and a New Year's Eve that no one would ever forget. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the city was loud with celebration. Music echoed through apartment walls, car horns blared, and the streets glittered with lights. Inside a modest apartment on the third floor of a quiet building, everything was unusually calm. No music, no laughter, just a man sitting alone at a small dining table, staring at his phone, waiting for a message that never came. His name was Daniel Carter, 36 years old. Quiet, reliable, and invisible to most people who knew him. He worked a stable job, paid his bills on time, and lived a life that left no trace of trouble. To the outside world, Daniel was just another man welcoming the new year alone. But inside that apartment, something was already terribly wrong. Across town, at a crowded New Year's party, a woman named Emily Ross was laughing with friends. She wore a black dress, her phone tucked away in her purse, unaware that she was being watched, not by eyes but by expectations. Emily and Daniel had shared a complicated history. They had met 2 years earlier, grown close quickly, and then slowly drifted apart, or at least Emily had drifted apart. Daniel never truly let go. Friends described Emily as warm and independent. She had recently decided to start fresh in the new year. New goals, new relationships, and no more emotional baggage. Daniel, however, saw the new year as a deadline. A final moment to fix what he believed was broken, no matter the cost. At 11:52 p.m., Daniel stood up, put on his jacket, and picked up a small backpack from behind the couch. Inside it were items no one would ever expect from a man like him. Items that showed this wasn't an impulsive act, but something carefully thought out long before the fireworks began. Security cameras later showed him leaving the building calmly, blending into the celebrating crowd. He didn't look angry. He didn't look nervous. He looked determined. Emily left the party just after midnight. The countdown had ended. The hugs were over, and she wanted to go home. She stepped outside into the cold air, smiling as fireworks exploded overhead. She sent a quick text to a friend, saying she was on her way home, then started walking toward her car. She never saw Daniel until it was too late. What happened next took less than 5 minutes. No witnesses heard screams because the fireworks drowned out every sound. When the noise faded and the streets slowly emptied, Emily lay motionless near her car, the New Year's confetti scattered around her like a cruel decoration. By the time police arrived, Daniel was already gone. The crime shocked the city, not because it was violent, but because it was quiet. No forced entry, no public argument, no obvious motive, just a woman dead on New Year's night, and no clear suspect. Detectives initially struggled. Emily had no known enemies. She wasn't involved in illegal activity. Her life by all appearances was stable, but as investigators dug deeper, they found something familiar in many crimes that begin with emotional attachment. Messages. Daniel's name surfaced when police reviewed Emily's phone records. There were dozens of unanswered messages from him in the days leading up to New Year's Eve. Most of them sounded harmless at first. Wishes for a fresh start, apologies, requests to talk one last time. But the final messages told a different story. If we don't fix this before the year ends, it's over forever. You're leaving me behind. Please don't make me do something I regret. Investigators now had a direction. When police arrived at Daniel's apartment the next morning, they found the door unlocked. Inside, everything was neat, almost staged. The trash had been taken out. The dishes were clean. On the table sat a folded piece of paper with a single sentence written on it. I just wanted the pain to stop. Daniel was arrested later that day at a bus station, sitting quietly with the same backpack beside him. He didn't resist. He didn't deny what he had done. According to officers, his only question was whether Emily had died instantly. As the case moved forward, the city began asking a haunting question. How could a night meant for celebration turn into a tragedy so calculated? and cold. The answer wasn't found in the final moments of the crime, but in the months of obsession, entitlement, and silent resentment that led up to it. Psychologists later explained that Daniel had built an entire future in his mind, one that depended on Emily's presence. When she chose a different path, his world collapsed. The new year wasn't a beginning for him. It was an ending he refused to accept. And as the fireworks faded into memory, one truth became painfully clear. Not all crimes are born from anger. Some are born from the quiet belief that if someone can't move forward with you, they shouldn't be allowed to move forward at all. As the investigation moved forward, the public began to see a version of Daniel Carter that had never been visible before. The quiet man with a stable job slowly turned into the center of a disturbing story about control, denial, and a refusal to accept change. Prosecutors laid out a timeline that showed how the crime was not a sudden breakdown, but the final step in a long internal process. In the weeks before New Year's Eve, Daniel had started withdrawing from people around him. Co-workers noticed he stayed late at the office, not because of work, but because he didn't want to go home. He searched online for articles about starting over and how to stop someone from leaving you. These searches alone didn't prove intent, but when combined with other evidence, they painted a clear picture. Phone records showed that Daniel had driven past Emily's apartment multiple times in the days leading up to the crime. He never went inside. He never approached her. He just watched. Investigators described it as a form of emotional surveillance, a way of staying connected without permission. On New Year's Eve, he parked 2 streets away and waited, knowing the celebration would cover his movements. During interrogation, Daniel spoke in a calm, almost detached tone. He described the night as if it was something that had already happened long ago. He admitted that he knew Emily wanted distance. He admitted that she had made her decision clear. But what disturbed detectives the most was how he justified his actions. Not with anger, but with logic. He said he believed the new year symbolized a point of no return. That once the calendar changed, Emily would fully move on, and he would be erased from her life. In his mind, stopping her wasn't about punishment. It was about preventing abandonment. Investigators later described this mindset as deeply dangerous, where emotional loss becomes more terrifying than moral consequences. At trial, the courtroom was silent as prosecutors played recordings of Daniel's unanswered messages. Each one showed desperation growing into entitlement. Defense attorneys argued that Daniel was emotionally unstable and overwhelmed by rejection. They suggested the crime was driven by emotional collapse rather than intention. But the evidence told a different story. The backpack, the timing, the choice of location, everything aligned too precisely to be dismissed as a moment of uncontrollable emotion. The jury saw what the fireworks had hidden that night. A crime carefully placed in the loudest moment of the year to avoid detection. Emily's friends testified next. They spoke about her excitement for the future, her plans for the coming year, and her relief at finally setting boundaries. One friend recalled Emily saying, just days earlier, that she felt hopeful again, that she finally felt free. Those words echoed through the courtroom, contrasting sharply with the finality of what happened next. Experts explained how fixation can turn into justification when someone believes another person owes them emotional permanence. When that belief is threatened, the response isn't always anger. Sometimes it's control, framed as desperation, and sometimes it ends in irreversible violence. Daniel never cried during the trial. He listened. He nodded. When given the chance to speak, he said he wished he could go back and choose differently, but he never said he accepted Emily's right to leave. That absence of acknowledgement became one of the most powerful moments in the case. The verdict came quickly. Guilty. As the judge delivered the sentence, the courtroom remained still. There was no dramatic reaction, no outburst, just the quiet reality of a life taken and another permanently defined by a single decision made while the world was celebrating. In the weeks that followed, the case faded from headlines, replaced by newer stories and different tragedies. But for those who looked closely, it left behind a warning that went far beyond one night or one relationship. It showed how dangerous it can be when someone confuses love with ownership and connection with control. New Year's Eve would return again the next year. Fireworks would light the sky. People would make promises to themselves, and toast to fresh beginnings. But for one family, one group of friends, and one city, that date would never mean the same thing again. Because while time moves forward for everyone, not everyone is willing to let others move forward too. And that is how a night meant to celebrate the future became a reminder of how fragile life can be when someone decides that their pain matters more than another person's right to live.